Well, hello my lovelies. I've been having issues with OBS, blank screen. I've tried different things. It doesn't seem to have worked, so just going to have to do it the old-fashioned way. Put the camera in 16:9. This is the Paris, a map of the 1837 Paris exhibition. Now, here we had two massive mega statues facing each other. The Soviet statue and the German statue. Now, this is absolutely incredible. They wouldn't do this these days. But here we have a look at the two different religions. That's right, religions of World War II. We're looking at the German sun religion and the Soviet Yahweh moon religion. Charles, what are you talking about? Yahweh moon religion? Charles, have you finally lost it? What's going on? What is going on with Charles today? Well, I'll tell you what's going on. In World War II, there were literally different religions having a go at each other. Tick History made a video about it. I have not yet watched it. I want to watch it as soon as I finish this, because I want to put my ideas out there first. I've recorded this in several parts. This is the final installment. I've done the earlier installments in which we go into further detail presently. So let us get to work. So here we have the Eiffel Tower, and there's the Soviet contribution and the German contribution by Albert Speer. What's going on, people? Here we have the two different religions facing against each other and explaining each other. So let's get into it. Oh, there we go. So this is it. This is actually it, right? This is what we're talking about. So here we have the Soviet religion, and here we have the German religion. Now you're going to say, Charles, these are statues. I want to see the religion. Show me the religion, Charlie. Right. Okay, I'll show you the religion. It's right in front of you. Here we have the German Phoenix sun religion. The phoenix and rising from the ashes, and the golden eagle. And obviously I've blanked out the symbols because now it's, these symbols are now unlawful. So, we can't have those symbols. And unholy. I forgot to mention unholy as well, because this religion has kind of taken over the world. All Marx's manifesto has been implemented. Yeah, but what sort of religion is it? What are we talking about? This is the Yahweh moon religion. They are reaching up to touch the sickle, touch the moon, and they have the hammer next to it because the hammer exemplifies the technology of the technology god. Technology is named after the god Thoth. Thoth is Thoth is the father. Also the fallen one, the moon. He is an ibis. He has a lunar ibis. He is the god of technology, the Egyptian alphabet. And here are his two creations, the man and the woman. Because in communism, the highest being is the human. So here we have the highest beings possible, the man and the woman, on top of the statue. So it's not going to be eagles, it's going to be humans, right? Germany was a bit different. So it's got the old eagle, the old Roman thing. That's because that is the phoenix, and this is the solar religion versus the lunar religion of technology, the solar religion of bursting out, rebirth, and the sun. And they're both on a kind of, you could call it a pyramid or something. Here we have the Trinity, 3 steps, or possibly a fourth, but 3 main ones here. Again, we've got the triple step in this Empire State type deco sculpture here, 1, 2, 3. For the old Trinity religion. This is absolutely incredible, people. Absolutely incredible. 2 religions. Here we'll have the fire. So here are some urns for some kind of sacred fire around the phoenix, because the phoenix has to be roasted to rise from the ashes. And you don't even have to know what the phoenix religion is to make a statue of it. Why? Because these archetypes, like laws of physics, seem to keep recurring through human history. Like, they didn't know they're representing Yahweh and the moon and all this. They didn't know necessarily they're representing the sun with the sun symbol, and the phoenix is holding its wrapped up egg. We will get into that. They didn't know that. They didn't know why are they flinging their hands back like that? Well, why were they doing that for? Why? What is that for? We're going to discuss what that is for in this video. Just incredible. This is one of my best. Oh, and here we have the phoenix. So the legend goes, according to Herodotus, he wrapped up his parents into a ball of myrrh, and he takes this ball back to the temple of the sun in Egypt, and he deposits it there. And that's what the phoenix does. And Herodotus says this is their story, although I can't really believe it. But that's what he was told in Egypt when he visited Egypt. That is, and into the temple of the sun, so that this ball of the parent may be reborn from the ashes. In other words, that Germany may be reborn from the ashes of World War I and defeat into glorious sudden victory like a sunburst. That's what the religion is all about. So that is what it's all about. The Göbekli Tepe religion, and I do think that did the religion survive for 10,000 years? Look, I don't know. Certainly we saw the 5 little ducks in there. I think that goes back to these times, although I have to say, due to the fact that it looks so much like Easter Island, like other places of people, as people have pointed out, is it really 10,000 BC, or have they mucked up? It looks like Egyptian pre-dynastic as well. Why does it have to be older here and younger everywhere else? I don't get that. I think the dates might be muddled, but in 50 years we'll know. So just a bit of crap from AI. It's just telling me rubbish about why the Soviet symbols are thrown, why the hands are thrown backwards. Dynamic movement, strength, revolutionary fervor, progress, struggle. Look, forget about it. Just forget about it. It doesn't explain why. We'll explain why. The music. The music as well. So the Wagner, Tannhauser Overture. Now, the first part of... It's a sunrise. It's a glorious sunrise. And even the picture they've chosen, it's like there's light beyond the forest. You're in the dark forest, but there's the light outside, you see. And then it goes into, then the daytime starts about there, and it's about the sunrise religion. And this music was basically holy to the Germans at the time. By contrast, the religion of the music of the Soviet Union was mechanical, like a machine. Because the machine and the human are the highest technology. It's all about the struggle, the hard work, the machine. The machine, the tractor, is triumphant. The technology given by Thoth is triumphant. And although they didn't necessarily think of it in these terms of Thoth or Phoenix or whatever, nevertheless they are expressing similar ideas which fit into these ancient paradigms. So the question is, why is this occurring? Because these religions, these gods, are actually part of the human psyche, whether we like it or not. Mussorgsky. So in the 19th century it was very different. For example, the Dorokeev, it's a very glorious song. It is also like a sunrise. In the 19th century, they were very much into romanticism about the Middle Ages, because they didn't like this industrial revolutionary world that they were falling down into. They really didn't appreciate it that well. Fascinating. So this is also a glorious type music because it's a right-wing music. It's fitting that sunrise, expectation. The wings are basically where the nobles sit. So if it's right, it's right wing, and if it's left, it's on the left in their parliamentary committees. Absolute monarchy is the most right wing you can get. Just absolutely incredible people. So let's round off that section and let's continue with the video where we explain that hand, why the hands are outstretched like that, and even more. Yeah, so, oh, we don't need that, just put that there. So, righto, okay. Nazis, Germans, and Soviets in World War II, were they actually two different religions, two different ideological religions attacking each other, trying to destroy each other because they were religions? Now, Tig History, who I really admire, he's discovered the libertarianism and the Ayn Rand and all that, so he's decided to be selfish and stop making videos. But I noticed he made a video on this very subject, and he said it was two different religions going at each other, the Nazis and the Soviets. What are these religions? Now, I have not watched his video. What I'd like to do is make this video first, then watch his video. But this is my take on what these two religions might be. Now, very interesting. For starters, it's the moon and the sun. So the moon is the Soviet crescent, the sun is the German flag. And hence they allied with the other sun religion in Japan. Now, how do we see this? How do we see it? We see it partly in the intensity of Hitler's speeches. If you look at some of his AI, and you see it in English, you see what's happening is that there's the melodious voice, and there's an intensity, and the way he speaks, it's kind of like energy. It's the energy of the sun. It doesn't stop. It doesn't let up. It keeps pounding you down with excitement and energy and fire until you just give up. And it's one thing after another. And are we not expected to believe in this when we can believe in that? And are we expected to do this? It's just really strong, forceful energy. And when we look at Stalin's speeches by comparison, it's very different. It's, comrades, we're here today, and don't worry about the Germans. We'll defeat them, because we've got our strong forces and population. It's very rational. It's a matter of fact. He's not a good speaker. He knows he's not a good speaker. He doesn't care. He doesn't need to be. These are two different avatars. The first one is the sun. The second one is the calmness of the moon. The Germans have the fatherland, the sun. The Russians have the motherland, the moon. Stan Gooch touched on some of these ideas. He suggested the Jews were part Neanderthal, and they were moon worshippers, and so they had just a different way of looking at things, and they were even partly nocturnal, because the Neanderthals have bigger eyes, and you can look into his theories. They're rather interesting. I don't necessarily agree with those theories, but they're rather interesting as well. When I'm just reading a book, Synchronicity, Science, Myth, and the Trickster Combs. It's a typical 20th century type, not that long book. It's no pictures, just text. Typical the 20th century. Carl Jung says this, Carl Jung says that. Didn't Einstein say God does not play? They just keep quoting the other authors, and this is all the 20th century authors do this. The theoretical ones, they're just quoting each other all the time, and it's a bit annoying. They're not that original, but one of the interesting things that he comes up with is that the ancient Greeks suggested that the trickster god is Hermes. Hermes the messenger, the root is moon. In other words, if the German god was the sun, the rebirth of the nation, like the rebirth of a new day, the rapid expansion like solar rays, the lightning bolts, the energy of the SS, the fire, the energy, the power. Then with the Soviets, it's very different, because it's a trickster god in command. This is the trickster god who helped humanity. So the Russian god is therefore a lunar trickster god, and this is known as the Maui. The Maui was also a trickster god for the Pacific Islanders, who are those statues, and who I've identified as lunar statues of basically Min, which starts at Göbekli Tepe. They're both shaped like the crescent of the moon.
and they're there to help mankind give him knowledge. And that is kind of how events played out, with the Americans and the British helping the Russians. So I've just seen some quotes from Zhukov last night, and Zhukov was saying that the Americans gave them 16,000 wonderful trucks that they couldn't do without, and all the steel they needed to build their tanks. So very, very proper steel, whereas the Russian steel was a little bit fragile. It wasn't the greatest steel on the planet. In other words, this messenger is the trickster. And it even boils down to fighting tactics. I've been looking up a lot of these fighting tactics. In 1941, the Germans were laughing that the Russians seemed to be using wooden aeroplanes, which were literally, they were only 10 years out of date, which is not much these days. We're still using planes from 50 years ago in militaries, but 10 years back then was a lot. So it was a huge amount. So, and the Russian planes were slow, low altitude. The German planes fast, high altitude, metal. And what we actually notice is that the Germans would say things like, the Germans didn't, when they were invading, they didn't necessarily need to sacrifice their lives. They weren't defending their own homeland. The Russians were. So they always go on about the Soviet treachery, the Russian trickiness and treachery. In other words, the Russians, if they ran out of ammo, they might suddenly break formation and dive into a German plane and kill themselves. And the Germans thought this was very strange because, well, I'm sure a few Germans might have done this also, but many German commentators said, how can we defeat an enemy who's prepared to do this? The French weren't prepared to do this. What's going on? We don't understand what's happening here. This is the religion, in some ways, of the trickster god. Look, both nations obviously engaged in widespread trickery. Soviet tactics involved doing the opposite of what was conventionally thought to be proper warfare. The Germans did some of this as well with their new mobile warfare, but let's face it, everyone was doing mobile warfare in those days. The Russians, for instance, used ski troops and winter offensives. This was traditionally thought to be impossible, taking the Germans by surprise. Tricky maneuvers. It was based on trapping German armies to reduce their potential. Hitler actually did try and do the same things, trapping Soviet armies rather than going after capital cities. Part lunar god there as well. And it was, but I used AI to look up a lot of Hitler quotes, and there are quite a few quotes where he says, the Russians play possum and then attack. They play helpless. They play games. They did this with Stalingrad, and I looked up some quotes about this, and basically all the Germans were saying, no one saw this coming. They were in Stalingrad, they got there, they took one of the major cities in addition to Kiev, they were happy, and no one saw that winter offensive coming where they would just get cut off like that. The ultimate tricky maneuver. So, did the Soviets worship the lunar crescent? And did the Germans worship the high energy sun god? Okay guys, as usual there's more. There's more. So, when we deal with the solar religion versus the lunar religion, unlike the solar religion, includes the earth. It includes the earth. And this goes towards the Russian culture of... The Germans were saying, why the Russians don't seem to care about their own lives for some reason when they're just flying planes. They just want to crash into us and look, I'm sure a few Germans did this as well, but we're talking, philosophy here in this video, so don't pick me up on that. But here's the thing: the moon and the earth is the same god, kind of the same god, and lots of the mythologists don't talk about this. And now here's some evidence for it. The moon god, the trickster, falls down to the earth. He's the fallen one. He comes here to create, and therefore, and thence afterwards continue to assist and help mankind. So he's not only a moon god, he's like a moon god living on earth, or a moon avatar living on earth and trapped inside the earth. So he is the earth. And this is why, say, the religion, the Jewish religion doesn't have a heaven, because their heaven is here. We're already here. And so if you die, you just come back. You just get reincarnated. So it's okay. So the moon is linked to the earth. Enki, is kind of an earth water god who created man. But the Ea that I've identified in Egypt, that disappeared in the New Kingdom about the time the Jews left Egypt, was a moon god in the Egyptian hieroglyphics. This is the Yahweh in Egyptian hieroglyphics in that video, so see that video as well. So the earth and the moon must be linked. So if the sun, therefore this explains in some way, subconsciously, in a very simplistic, extremely simplistic and possibly wrong way, some of this behavior. So that is something I really wish to make clear. The moon god is also the earth god, but the sun god is not the earth god. With Germany, we had Operation Spring Awakening, I think in the West. That might have been the Battle of the Bulge. We had in the East, we had Operation Solstice against the Soviets in 1945, which went absolutely nowhere because the Germans were outnumbered, hopelessly outnumbered and outgunned. And they'd lost all their best men already fighting in the against Russia and against the Allies. So there we go. I'm trying to think if there's another angle to this with regards to the sun. But yeah, you see it. You know, the black sun is the solar eclipse. So they're worshipping a solar eclipse at Wewelsburg. And the Russians didn't have anything like this. Lenin grey statues, and he's always kind of it's almost like a crescent. If you look at a statue of Lenin, it's always something like it's like that. He's always, the coat's going like that. It's almost crescent-like in a way. It's as if they're trying to. What are they trying to do with that? Are they trying to show a lunar crescent somehow? Why? And always grey stone. He's always grey. I've never seen him in beige, the sandstones. It's always a grey, bluestone type rock, like the colour of the moon, you see? So, you know, these are questions we should ask. I think these are decent questions we need to ponder and ask people. So thanks for listening to me mouthing on non-stop. Right, we're actually not done. So I've put the coat on again for effect. So there's more. Let me collect my thoughts. Now, I just want to say there's no idea of exclusivity in this. It's not that certain soldiers on this side will behave in this way, soldiers and politicians on the other side must always behave in a different way. Of course, there's going to be some kind of overlap here in these ideas. So that I'd like to bear that in mind. Nor are the ideas I'm postulating in this video a rule. These are ideas which can influence the behavior of one side possibly more than another. That's what's being suggested. Now, what about the idea of the incomparable sun, the unconquerable sun of Roman times? Bear in mind that Germany for millennia saw itself as the continuation of the Roman Empire. So did Russia, but not necessarily under the Soviets. And as the continuation of the Roman Empire and the sun religion, they see, here's the thing, Hitler, reading Schopenhauer and all this, saw his will as paramount. He said, we will impose our will on the Russians. We have to break them. We'll break them with our will. Okay, right. Now, what he has always failed to consider is that the Russians also have their own will. every animal has its own willpower, and it might be acting against his willpower. And this is something he never ever considers. Now, there's two reasons for this. One is simply that the German philosophers all believe that the Slavs never developed the idea of. Firstly, they never developed the idea of a world system according to Hegel and all this. And Himmler goes on about this. Himmler says, "Oh, they don't have a worldview, and because they don't have a worldview, they don't have a world. They can't conquer the world." Forgetting the fact that Russia was the biggest country on the planet. Yeah, okay. But anyway, more to the point of the video, it's all about will. Why would Hitler think his will was more important than the will of everyone else's? Well, it makes sense if he sees himself as the sun. If he's the only son, his rays, or the rays of Germany, are stronger than the rays of everyone else because they're the sun god. In that way, I suppose there's something to it. Something also needs to be said, and this draws into the idea of overlap, the idea of the Superman. The Germans with the blonde hair, Russians also have blonde hair, but the Germans with the blonde hair, the solar god, straight away, the solar god, the Superman, right? This is really interesting because they were following the idea that the individual with his strength and power and might can conquer a massive collective just with his willpower, with his strength, with his own energy. This does pop up in German philosophy a little bit. It implies that the individual is as strong as a single atom exploding versus all the other atoms, which is quite interesting as well. An explosion of willpower and fanaticism. Goebbels went on about this a lot, although often you saw just as much fanaticism from the other sides as well. Hitler would often say that the Russians are fighting like fanatics and they won't give up. Very interesting. So the Russians, however, look, there is overlap. They did have their Superman too, the heroes of the Soviet Union, although these were seen as subordinated to the communist philosophy. Perhaps a little bit more than the German heroes were seen as subordinate to National Socialism or to Hitler. So these are some more ideas in which the solar religion seems to play out here versus the lunar trickster religion of the Russians. It's quite interesting indeed, this philosophy. So I wanted to bring your attention to those points also, because they're also just fascinating. And the more I think about this entire subject, the more this philosophy kind of makes sense. I find this quite interesting. So to conclude, I may as well wrap it up. Enough. Three segments is enough. The Soviet Union was following Ea, which is the Earth-Moon religion. The Soviets thought that if we harness the powers of the Earth through our collective farm technology, we can achieve greatness. What is given to us by the Earth. They also, just like the Germans, they tried to conquer technology, and this is not as well known. I've noticed that everyone puts down the Russian weapons. In many cases, they were just as good, if not better, than the German weapons. The German weapons were also kind of outdated in some ways, a bit temperamental. And the Germans always, it's part of their philosophy, it's always to over-engineer. Part of the reason I think they built the pyramids. This over-engineering, I believe, may have cost them 2 world wars because they're all about the theory. And when it comes to practice, it's like, are we going to have the tanks this year? Like, they're so complicated. Are we going to have them yet? Hitler was waiting for these tanks for Kursk. Are we going to actually have them yet or not? And meanwhile, the Russians dug 9 levels of defense. Trenches upon trenches upon trenches that the Germans couldn't hope to get through. So it's the idea that a single piece of technology that the Germans had is so powerful. This heavy tank, it's so... Forget the fact the Russians also had the same heavy, like almost the same heavy tanks. The Germans thought their heavy tanks were better for some reason. They have these massive heavy tanks, and they think this heavy tank is so good, it can obliterate an entire Soviet army. It can get through, that just that alone will make it win. Later in the war, Hitler was saying, I think this is from 44 or 45, he said, the Eastern Front is a disaster. We send our best men, and yet they get chewed up and destroyed. What's going on? So he's thinking that if we send our best men against a 9 million Soviet army, they'll win. What is going on in this man's brain? This is the solar religion. This is the religion of the atom, the atomic power. That's what this is, people. So there we go. Yeah. Anyway, just spying on the neighbours. Damn, I wish they'd move out. Anyway, so cheerio. Yeah, look. These are very important points. Thanks for watching to the end, those of you that have. Yeah. Anyway.